Well, good morning, everybody. We'll wait for the waiting room people to come in. Well, good morning, everybody. It's 10 a.m. and welcome to the first in our 2025 Mind Expansion Series programs entitled Ever Pressed the Send Button and Regretted It? I've done that many times, so I'm particularly anxious to hear what we have to say today. Before we get down to business, a few quick housekeeping items. Please make sure that your audio and video are muted. Sometimes people get through the Zoom walls. We don't know how, but if you see yourself on screen, please mute yourself. Feel free to submit questions to our presenters today through the chat button at the bottom. And a reminder that we are recording today's program. We will send you a LuxeStream link late this afternoon with which will link you to the recording, to the Zoom recording. If you don't get it, check your spam folder. It's probably sitting in there. So why today's program? Email, as an example, is an unavoidable habit of daily life, both personal and professional. Yet its simplicity, its ubiquity, and speed of use deliver a degree of danger that lurks behind every keystroke. So from a legal liability standpoint, the request for production of internal corporate files, most notably thousands of email messages, has driven the need to apply exceptional care in how one communicates in a universe of instantaneous correspondence, where there is little time to ponder or to reflect or to think. Today, we're delighted to introduce HarmCheck by Alphy. It's a tool for real-time detection of harmful and unlawful communication. It gives clear real-time alerts before messages are sent, helping users and employees to understand whether their words are helping or harming themselves or their companies. And employees get the chance to self-correct, while companies get a new and superior insurance policy against costly communication. 40 plus categories, including discrimination in the workplace, covert language, threats, and retaliation, are all subject to HarmCheck by Alphy's review and oversight. And our Sherpa guides for today's journey are Julian Guthrie, who is the CEO and founder of Alphy, and Carolyn Zinko, my friend and partner in past crime, who is the AI editor and editorial director. Welcome, Julian. Welcome, Carolyn. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So let's have some fun here. And I won't say anything naughty. I'm a moderator on Nextdoor, so I'm somewhat familiar with the stuff that gets through. And I have to sort of vote on that and give an opinion on it. And that's a tough job, just as with stuff that's overt. So this issue of how we deal with business communication and the stuff that sneaks through becomes very relevant. To you, Julian, how serious is the issue today in terms of personal and professional communication? And give me numbers, give me some meat to support whatever claim we want to make here.
So it's very consequential in terms of our own professional and personal lives, and obviously how we communicate with customers, with clients, with friends, with partners, how we can use communication to advance ourselves or set ourselves back. There's that level of it. Then what we've created for companies is really looking at how do we protect your company and your employees from harm. So we know that billions of dollars are levied each year in fines to heavily regulated industries, notably financial services. So there is the financial toll, there is the cost and toll wrapped into that of litigation stemming from harmful, unlawful communication. There are discrimination lawsuits across industries. So we began to look at the toll that is both personal, professional, and for your company, and set about to create a new technology that mitigates harm in all of these categories, from some you mentioned, covert communication, to unfair lending, to even anger, which you referenced. We often send emails that we don't necessarily know the tone. The tone is lost in your writing, and you cringe after you've sent it. You're like, oh, I really shouldn't have sent that. Or it was received, I wasn't intending it to be angry, but it was angry. So we're looking at all all elements, many, many layers of how communication can harm you or help you.
Yeah,
Julie, are
and
there any numbers to support that? Any data, or just anecdotal? It's happening in 20% of the cases. I'm trying to get a beat on
Sure.
that.
well, I was just about to leap in there. So we looked at just recently in the news. There've been stories about how the government regulators, government agencies have levied more than $2.5 billion in fines against more than a dozen financial institutions on Wall Street because they are allowing employees to go off channel to instead of, financial institutions have to keep all of their business as usual communications in email, and then they have to store it for 7 years. So the SEC can get their hands on it. Regulators want to know how companies are doing their business, if they're doing anything shady or they're following the rules. Well, everybody wants to do everything fast these days, so they're allowing people, or in some cases, people are just going to WhatsApp to DM me, text me, and that's not kosher. So $2.5 billion and counting in fines is not something that financial institutions want to pay, but now they have to because they weren't following the rules. So we detected the capability to detect people saying, "Hey, don't stay off email, DM me, take this to Signal, go to WhatsApp." And so ostensibly, now they'll catch things, and that'll be a way for companies to be more proactive in ferreting out things and preventing these incidents from happening.
Caroline, what about at the smaller business level? Any gut feeling there as to how rampant the problem is?
I'll jump in. So the cost to SMBs is for every 100 employees, the cost of unlawful and miscommunication is put at $400,000. So
What?
yeah, so that's for SMBs alone. And with big companies, heavily regulated companies, banks, and others, they're spending $10,000 per person per year on compliance to address this. A use case, one of the banks we're working with, um, had an incident last year where they were found to have discriminated in lending against Armenian Americans. And they texted about it. Hey, don't lend to anyone with the last name IAN or YAN. We look at e-discovery, we look at court cases, and we find these harmful bits of communication. But so what happened with that is they were fined by the SEC $30 million, which wasn't a huge amount for this particular, one of the world's biggest banks. But the CEO then had to go before the Senate Banking Committee and do the mea culpas, and they have to put in place new technologies to better address this and prevent this in the future. So that's a kind of a spotlight case that was one of the things actually that inspired us to create an unfair lending detection system. And Carolyn really led that. It may be relevant to this group here. I know you're thinking about, lending, fair lending, credit risks. Do our individual biases seep in, even when we're consciously making an effort, of course, to always not have that be the case. But we created an unfair lending classifier that's really a first of its kind, that's proactive, that looks at all of the prohibited classes.
Is there a sort of a hierarchy of sort of the low-hanging poison, if you will? Is it harassment? Is it sexual harassment? Is it the COVID? Is it bad language? Is it what? What's appearing at the top of the pyramid?
We started with harmful, looking at tone. So, anger. We created all of our own training. Again, Carolyn and team led that. And then we began to look at all of what I call the isms: racism, ageism, sexism, classism, ableism. And so we looked at creating a system to detect societal bias. And then we went further because we are selling this solution into companies and looking at EEOC protected classes. So discrimination in the workplace as the next tier. And then because we began working with heavily regulated banks, we looked at what are the pain points for financial services in particular: covert communication, document tampering. We're working on a label for antitrust detection. So really, again, zeroing in on now industry by industry, sector by sector. Carolyn, did you want to add something?
Well, as we looked at the EEOC website and then dug into what kinds of violations are most prevalent, what you find is that a lot of the claims um, in the workplace, that employees will file against the employer are for age discrimination, for disability discrimination, for gender discrimination. So
And retaliation is a big one.
retaliation is a really big one. So, uh, you know, I don't want to let's not hire him. He's a dinosaur. We need some fresh blood. We need some digital natives on this team. Forget about her. She's over the hill, stuff like that. And then, uh, why should we make this office, why do we have to make accommodations for him? Having a wheelchair user at the front desk isn't a good look for us, stuff like that. I mean, people actually say
Got it.
these things. Um, while we were researching on uh, the isms, we came across a news story about two senior partners at an employment law firm in Los Angeles, and they wanted to leave and start their own agency. So this this office was part of a national group, but in Los Angeles, they decided to leave and take 100 employees with them. So the firm, as you can imagine, wasn't too happy about that. And these two guys disparaged their law firm on the way out. So the law firm said, "Okay, we're going to go and look at their emails." And lo and behold, they found these two male senior partners had, and excuse my language, said on company email on their law firm account
Mhm.
to each other, "Oh yeah, I don't I know her name is Barbara, but I like to call Babs sugar tits. Uh, he's a fag, no wonder he's not getting any good cases. She's a cunt. Uh, yeah, I know she's grossly overweight and has acne, but I'd fuck her in a second." Stuff like that. I mean,
Good Lord.
Yeah.
people are saying things like
Yeah,
this, and
people really
these
say these things.
employment lawyers
These
are
were
saying
senior
this.
lawyers. These
Senior
were senior
partners,
partners.
senior
Yeah.
partners at a law firm. So the firm made this public to say, you know what, guys, this isn't cool. And now, they cooked their own goose, really, because they thought they were above everything. So my point is, if senior law partners are saying this, what about other people?
Exactly.
Employment lawyers.
Employment
In
lawyers.
employment law, you get which industries have been the early adopters? Who's jumped? Obviously, financial services, because that's the low hanging fruit in terms of liability. Who else is getting in quickly into this?
Well, interesting. We're finding it relevant. We've been focusing on financial services, and it's a very protracted, prolonged, painful process to get into banks. It takes about a year to do so. But that's one where we think we have huge upside with that. We're also starting to look at retail. We're looking at anywhere people are doing lending. So on the real estate side, on the mortgage broker side, on the loan officers, wherever credit is issued, because of the unfair lending detection system that we have that will flag it. Right now, these things are caught after the fact. What we do is proactive. So if someone is typing in something like that occurred with the bank, no more lending to anyone with the last name IAN or YN, it's going to pop up and it's potentially going to be quarantined and not let it send. So we're specializing. Financial services is a huge area, but we are starting. So we're really focused on getting really strong and deep into the market there. And then going into the retail, we're looking at auto lending. Again, anything involving lending, brokerage, loans has resonance. And we can create now AI detection systems for just about any category of harm. And yeah, go ahead.
Of harmful language.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also say, like, even small companies or individually owned companies where you don't have enough money to have an HR officer, a compliance officer, you know, like maybe you inadvertently say something like, gee, I really like that candidate, but she's in her 30s and, you know, she's making noises about wanting to have a baby. We don't have a great maternity policy. That's illegal because that's gender discrimination in the workplace. So, you know, it can potentially catch things for any kind of business. We just happened to have a really good product you know, we've made some initial contacts with banks. Um, but it could really be helpful for anyone.
Well, if you think about
And
marketing
and
as well.
and and if you're, you know, conversing with your colleagues, you know, and you say something untoward and you think it's funny and you're saying it to your colleagues, like these two employment lawyers. Well, what if somebody makes a screenshot and shares it with,
Right.
you know, someone else? Now you've got a lawsuit on your hands. So better for, as you're typing, to have racist, sexist, gender discrimination pop up in real time before you hit send, and then you go, oh, yeah, that probably isn't a good idea. That's probably not going to be funny to, you know, so and so. And then you just recast it and send it and just say it say something in a different way, or just don't say it at all.
Let me ask you to improvise for just a moment. Think you both of you have bought and sold houses and homes, so you know what the transaction is like. Where are realtors vulnerable here?
Well, I think
Obviously, the whole mortgage discussion, because there's lending comes into the equation somewhere in the buy-sell transaction. Where else?
Well, I'm not meaning to plug this book, but I bought this book called Unfair Lending, and it's by a guy
By
named Troy
Tory.
Haggerty. Troy Haggerty
Hmm. Okay.
was a compliance officer and did a lot of audits for the FDIC of banks. And what he says and what we've seen in lawsuits is that people don't really they're not really aware of their own biases. And so you know, like one bank manager would give men a 7% interest rate on a home loan, but he always gave women a 14% rate on a home loan. Or in marketing, you know, like, why are we marketing to the Vietnamese community when they can't afford to buy in the zip code? Well,
Got you.
now you've made a blanket statement about a protected class because that's nation of origin, race, color, and you don't know. You're supposed to, by the law, consider each customer individually on their own financial merits and not all Vietnamese people, all white people, all women. But it happens.
Julie, anything to add? Because I want to move on. Any other comment on that?
Um, I think that, one area we missed for your prior question was like marketing. There are, wonderful small businesses that, have little money to spend on marketing. So they find someone, but then marketing goes out that is inappropriate or inappropriate for the brand. And, it can be a small slight, like, that was made by a wonderful small business, and something that went out, and then the CEO had to really take ownership of it. I think it said, "Who's your mammy?" It
It
was for
was for,
Mother's Day. Yeah, it was for Mother's Day, and the subject line was "Who's your mammy?" And if we typed that into our system, or if they had this, it would have come up as racist. And at least it would have made the person who was unaware this was unintended harm at least think about it. So, for SMBs, for small businesses, I think it's a great tool. But
well,
I
because,
think Carolyn covered it very well on the unfair lending side.
yeah, and so this was actually a floral company, a floral delivery company. And if you type something like that into spell check or grammar check, it's going to tell you to add a comma or not capitalize or capitalize something, but it doesn't get to the intent or the meaning of the message. It just shapes the words so that they're grammatically correct and spelled correctly. Our tool
Okay.
doesn't do grammar or spell check, but I think what's more important is what are you actually saying? Because that can lead to get you in a lawsuit. A spelling mistake is not going to lead to a lawsuit.
And we're going to run a demo in just a few minutes. One final question before we go to the demo. Um, there are two cases that really stand out in my mind. One is obviously the Dominion case with Fox, where they got hit with I guess 800 million, close to $1 billion, and a lot of that was based on the discovery that came out of the trove of emails from Fox. And then I'm thinking about Harry and Meghan, certainly Harry or Prince Harry in the UK, who just got a settlement out of, I guess, Rupert Murdoch's News International, undisclosed amount. Any other just sort of any other cases either happening in the US or pending where there are big settlements, just to sort of drive home the point that this is costly?
Well, Lloyd's of London issued $1 million or £1 million fine to a market firm for failing to address systematic campaigns of bullying and sexual harassment. Um, there's a lot of banks have had class action lawsuits for sexism that cost hundreds of millions of dollars. The FDIC itself is under scrutiny because for those very reasons, their male managers are engaging in misogynistic behavior, telling female employees you have to use you have to use sex to get ahead here. A guy told a male supervisor told a female employee at lunch, yeah, if you were naked, I'd fuck you right now in front, right here.
You have to put a disclaimer on this or a warning on this.
Yeah, that's fine. Well,
Contains-
it's the reality. It's the
It is
truth.
a reality, yeah.
there was a in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, there was some kind of my memory is growing dim, but we did a blog post on it on our website, which we have lots of blog posts about this kind of language. Um, a guy told a young woman, a lesbian woman, you and your girlfriend would have to give me a blowjob for me to promote you. I mean, this is today, and this is amid all the training that people have to go through. We've all sat through 45 minutes or an hour of the computerized sexual harassment training about behavior in the workplace. And I don't know, people just think they can get away with it. And then they do until they don't.
And
Well,
they
and
don't.
it's this national discourse that we saw, without digressing into politics, but just speaking generally around the election and how the name calling and the denigration was every day, and it went back and forth,
On
and
both sides.
yeah, on both sides, and it was really, really dismaying and shocking to hear this name calling in a really degrading way become very common. So it's a bigger picture of what's happening to how we are communicating as humans. And what we created is, how can AI help us humans create better, and how can humans better create better AI, make the AI better? So kind of going both ways.
So let's do the demo. Let's see how it works, and I'll let you guys do the commentary. I'm going to shut up. Carolyn, you've got the screen share, I believe.
Sure, and I'll narrate a little while Carolyn gets that up. So we've integrated with communication tools used every day with Outlook, which is what you see here, with Teams chat, with a Google suite of products. So if you're in Gmail, we have that too. You're typing in, you can see Reflect AI. We've changed the branding to HarmCheck. You can remember us as there's spell check, grammar check, we're HarmCheck. So here you're typing in, I'd love to hire her, but she's going to want to have a baby. So on the right, you see it pops up as gender discrimination. It's really fast. It's giving you this prompt. It's not policing your words. It's really protecting you and your company. So you see these things being typed in, and it was reading it first as workplace discrimination. It's anti-LGBTQ discrimination. So again, it's giving you an alert. It's there to help you. For companies, this can also be on the back end only. So it can be detecting in real time. If you have a communication dashboard or compliance dashboard, It detects things anyway, even if there are misspellings, as you see. And so it discerns between things like, societal bias racism, discriminatory racism, racism in lending. We are not activist, which is important as well. We've intentionally trained it to be non-activist, but hew to laws. And so we don't cheer for, hooray, all women were hired, because that would be discriminatory. We have the same training to protect all classes. It's very new,
Julian,
proactive. Mm-hmm.
does this apply to emails only, or can this apply to anything that's typed? In other words, if I'm doing a Word document as part of a report, same principle, same filter?
We don't have an integration yet for a Word document, so it'd have to be like imported into an email for a check. But we're going in that direction, so stay tuned.
So that's coming soon.
Yeah.
So this is an email platform solely at this point in time.
No, we have email, text, both on the Microsoft side and the Gmail side, and we also can connect through our API keys to just about any communication platform that a company has. So it connects on the back end without having this necessary integration.
So, I'm sorry, what does that mean? Does that mean that if I'm posting to social media, it'll catch it there?
It won't for social media, but if a company is using their own internal messaging system, and they have 10,000 employees on that, we can connect to that. We have not connected yet to some of the more commercially available ones like Slack, or Discord. But with companies that have internal communication channels, we can connect through the API to that. So I don't know for the real estate industry if there's a special instant messaging or a unique instant messaging service that is used within companies that's separate from a Microsoft or a Slack. But if there were, we could connect to that and be flagging and detecting in real time.
What about text, SMS?
Yes.
Same principle?
Yes. Same principle.
Interesting.
So I don't know if this screen is pretty small, but
No, we can see I can see it loud and clear here. Go ahead, please.
Okay, originally I've typed a bunch of horrible things.
Which we do every day.
Which I do. I spend all my days typing horrible things. I'd love to hire her, but she's going to want to have a baby soon. Not a good risk for us. So over here you see gender discrimination. Who'd trust a dyke for a manager? Anti-LGBTQ discrimination. Originally I typed, make sure our real estate ads say something like, we want people like you to buy from us, and then point to a white family. And then that came up, discrimination in lending. So I changed it to, and then points to a mixture of people of different backgrounds. And it's not over here anymore, because now it's not discrimination in lending. It's showing that you are trying to equally appeal to everyone. Can't loan to those Muslims. They never repay their loans. Discrimination in lending. This is actually from in the Bay Area. I think we're familiar with what happened in Antioch a couple of years ago. The police department was a subject of investigation by the FBI and the Contra Costa County District Attorney's Office. So the officers were texting each other racist things about the community they served. Too bad that N doesn't bruise. I kicked his head to show him who's boss. So we would call this intimidation. So threat detected. You'd better watch out. I'm coming after you for crossing me at that meeting. Threat detected. This also has relevance specifically for California. I mean, everywhere, of course, you shouldn't be threatening or intimidating your colleagues or clients with physical harm. But last summer, a new Workplace Violence Prevention Act went into effect as of July 1st. All organizations with 10 or more employees must have a workplace violence prevention plan in effect. And so we think this tool is great to have in your back pocket because you could be alerted in real time to somebody who's saying things that are threatening or potentially violent. And that law came about because of the VTA shooting that happened a couple of years ago in San Jose at the San Jose rail yard, where one of the employees went off half-cocked and came in one day. He had said some threatening things to people. They brushed it off. And then he came in one day and started shooting people, and they died. 9 people died. I think it was 9. So, and then also at one of the banks, why is it at the banks? The one a senior manager was involved in a relationship with one of his female coworkers. She wanted to break it off. He didn't like that, so he started texting her and emailing her like 30 times a day. And among those things was things like, you're a shit mom from the lawsuit. Um, I'm coming, something like, I'm coming after you and your kids. Watch out.
Mm.
So you see that went from profane to initially said profane because of your shit mom, but then it changed to threat detected when it said, I'm coming after you and your kids. Watch out.
Quick question, digression. So I'm typing this and I'm seeing the feedback myself. Can somebody else within the organization monitor these? And put aside the legality of spying on somebody's emails, but is there an exception reporting system where that bad stuff can be reported to an outside monitor within the company?
Yeah, so that's what Julian was talking about. So it can work, this can work 2 ways. What we would see right here, where we're seeing as we type the responses, the prompts, the feedback, we would call that user facing because it's facing you, the user.
Right.
There's that immediate feedback. Then also on the right here, you'll see weekly summary, how many instances. So the user can get this kind of feedback, but then the employer gets a dashboard that has a dashboard. And so for each of the email accounts in the company, it will tally what what the different flagged examples of the flagged language. And you could set it up daily, weekly, monthly, however you want to. And so the compliance person, the HR person, they can check and see who's the problem here. What is the problem? What kind of training do we need to do? Or what kind of other action, discipline, or termination do we need to take? So it doesn't just
Which
go
way?
into the ether. It's not just like Alpha's seeing it and nobody else is seeing it.
That was my question. It's being captured somewhere for somebody to oversee if need be. If you wanted to do that, incorporate that.
Right. And
Um,
also, if I may add one thing there, companies can also quarantine things. Like if for threats, you don't want you're not going to give any feedback to the person who is making the threat because you know that person is already unhinged. You don't approach someone who's unhinged. So in the same way, we don't have that as employee facing certain labels. You can set it to company by company in terms of what you think is allowable, like anger, okay, profanity, okay. But if it's threats, if it's unlawful discrimination, as 2 examples, you can quarantine it, you can stop it. Person will send it, it will be elevated into your company communication dashboard. There will be an alert and someone can take action right away. We also, one of the things our differentiated AI training does is it reduces the false positives. So it's beginning to get into this contextual understanding of what is written rather than existing AI systems, which use, they call it dictionary or lexicon based, where there's a list of words literally, and the system is trained on detecting these kind of hotspot words. But of course, that creates a lot of false positives, a lot of red flags that shouldn't be there. Like somebody's going to get hurt. You could be saying that so many different ways. Somebody's going to get hurt if the water on the stairs isn't cleaned up. Well, that shouldn't be a threat. somebody's going to get hurt if they don't follow my order should be a threat. So we are contextualizing it with our AI training and reducing again those false positives, which really plague the industry of compliance, and which is uniquely enabled by where AI is today. And we've gotten really good at our training through trial and error, and through going back to our careers, a love of language and a love of words, and bringing in experts in linguistics and journalism. But that all speaks to where does a threat go? How can your company set guardrails around what is said? How can you monitor it in real time?
Julian, talk about culture for a moment. We know it's a problem, but I have a principle that says if I'm angry, don't respond, sleep on it tonight. You can type it now, but it goes out tomorrow morning. And I find that ameliorates the situation. Culturally, how do you get employees to deal with this, to understand the severity of this, and actually do something about it?
I think what's really powerful is that this isn't just a seminar, a workshop that folks go to, every 6 months, and we're inspired, in the moment for that hour or whatever it is, or we're annoyed by the online learning that makes our eyes glaze over. um, and we leave, and then we go back to business as usual. This is something that is with you all the time. We know that learning happens in incremental ways, where it is accessible, it's attractive, it's not punitive. As you see, it's giving you a reminder. So the best learning happens incrementally, and again with things that are affirmative, not punitive. So that's how we've put a lot of thought, a lot of academic research, best practices, into the user interface and the user experience. And then staying out of the way as well. As we've done our best so you have the adjacent sidebar space, where it's not interfering with the words, where you're not annoyed with it overriding, or even, I don't know how many people here like the Smart Compose feature, where it finishes your sentences, or if people are annoyed by it. But we believe that if you do something yourself, you're going to get better at it. If it's done for you, you are not going to get better at it. So that's another thing, as people a team that really, really loves communication and language, that was something we thought about as well. Do we autocorrect you, or do we give you a heads up that there's a problem here and you learn from it, so then you don't have that problem again?
Also, I don't really want to be in the business of telling people what they should be saying.
Right.
Say it your way.
Yes.
There's a question there. What are the required by law disclosures organizations and companies must provide to address overreach privacy issues? Any response to that?
Could you rephrase that?
Yeah, what are the required by law disclosures that organizations, companies must provide to address overreach privacy issues?
Well, I am not sure there is a privacy overreach when you're talking about employee email. If that's personal email, I think that's a different story. But any email that you send on company email, if you're using Compass or not your own personal Gmail or your own personal Outlook or whatever, that is the property of the company. They can look at your email at any time. They can look at all your emails. If you delete them, they don't vaporize. They're on the server, so they can always look at what you've been typing. I think they probably, they don't necessarily do that, but they can. That's how they find evidence for lawsuits. So we do. Our chief technology officer could answer this better, but we do meet various state and national privacy laws. So we don't. For instance, we block out, we don't capture people's phone numbers, we don't capture their social security numbers, we don't look at attachments, we don't read attachments. We only look at the things that you're typing in real time that are outgoing. We don't read the entire thread that's come in that you're responding to. So, when we're only flagging things that are problems. We're not storing your data. We don't keep your emails forever. We don't store any of your emails. We don't want to store people's emails. First of all, we don't have the space. And second, we don't want to be responsible for holding something that you are using for your business. We just flag the things that are problematic.
So let's talk about Alfie. I want to get some background on the company itself. Just starting with the principle that this is a totally AI platformed product, correct? AI is doing all the work. I'm assuming, therefore, that as AI improves and goes through its various iterations of improvement, what will happen to your products? Will you build more nuance in there? What's the development from your side, Carolyn?
Well, first of all, as you saw during the demo, our AI is not the same as Chat or Gemini or Claude or Perplexity. It's not going to talk to you. Our AI is very specific. It's very compact. It's only gives very concise responses to things that you're typing. So we're never going to tell you to how to make something, how to make food, or we're not going to be able to solve some kind of programming question. What we do, and a lot of companies have scraped the internet. They've spent a decade, 14, 15 years, scraping the internet and getting the AI so it can talk to you. We've done something completely different. We have used humans to create sheets and sheets and sheets, Excel, Google Sheets of language that we've trained it on racist, sexist, ageist, all the EEOC violations, the unfair lending. We've researched the laws, and we use that, and humans think of sentences, and then we type them, and we train the AI that way. Where we bolster our training with what we call synthetic data, which is we ask AI to create lists of sentences for us. The AI is not there yet where it's going to perform as well as a human. It's just not. So what we find is mistakes, repetition, things that basically, if we use them, would be like inbreeding, and we'd have species collapse because it's just sometimes hallucinating or giving us gobbledygook. So we review e each sentence that the synthetic AI has given us, the synthetic training at least 2 or 3 times by 2 or 3 different humans. And our team is a wide range of ages, backgrounds, sexual orientations, religions. So we're trying to come at it from a place of how can we have the least bias possible and the most responsible AI possible so that this product is not activist, but also doesn't miss things.
Take me through the actual process. I decide I want to buy HarmCheck today. I send money. I download a program. Am I then? Are all of my emails filtering through your firewall or through your filtration system real time, not being captured? But does it leave my system, run through your system, and then come? How does it work? Somebody.
Okay, I didn't know if you were addressing that to Carolyn or myself. So you can, download it. We can reach out to us. We'll get your team on it. It takes about 20 minutes. That's it. You can have it as a Chrome extension or as an Outlook add-in for your email. Again, the admin will deploy it for the folks he or she wants to be on it, and it can be charged. We charge per person per month, upfront yearly payment, and then it's installed as you saw in Carolyn's email, and it begins to work immediately with very little latency. And again, we're not storing things; we're returning things right away to you that are flagged. So we have a call. We we use OpenAI as an LLM, but these large language models are much less important than the fine tuning that we talked about, that Carolyn went into about the human-centric training. So you type something, it is going through our fine-tuned, what we call a classifier, and giving you that quick response. So without getting into, too many mind-numbing details, actually, it's pretty exciting to us, of course. It's a great question on your part, but then it returns the answer immediately. And we can do things with big banks where it's on-prem entirely, so it never leaves it. If the customer is big enough and requires an on-prem, not in a virtual cloud solution, we can do that as well.
And you don't capture any of that data. Nothing resides in your data banks.
It resides in our database for as long as it takes for us to give the weekly summaries. So I think we keep it for 6 or 7 days.
Okay.
But again, only the things that are flagged, not your entire.
Not the whole, yeah, not the whole email.
Gotcha. Foreign languages down the road, I assume. What would be the next foreign language that you would want to apply this to?
It's actually trained, these LLMs are trained on dozens and dozens of languages. So we could competently, but maybe not at our level of detection, roll it out in other languages. We would want to do additional training. We've trained it on American English. We've adapted it to some extent for the Australian market because we were working with a customer there.
That's interesting.
It's very easy for us to do. This was a funny little anecdote. I was on with one of the big banks, and this fellow asked this question about multiple languages, and he said, okay, and he sent me, he put this in the chat, I write in English, but I swear in Russian. And so it had this statement that was partially in English with profanity in Russian. And I said, well, let's try it. And sure enough, I was really surprised it detected it. So but we do fine tuning of the LLMs, and we would want to do the same thing so that we have the jargon, so we have the vernacular, as well as the local, regional, countrywide laws that are applicable. That we
that's a great
would add.
That's a great point, Julian. I mean, as an Australian, I still carry that mentality with me. So my sarcasm is not expressed in a way that all Americans can understand. Does your system pick up that degree of nuance?
I think we have to get very sophisticated to pick up your level of nuance.
Oh, please.
If you said, I don't want to hire any more Sheilas for that project, they'll ruin it.
You get it. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
That would be sexism. And we're not talking about, a woman named Sheila.
Or abos or terms like that are unique to the Aussie vernacular.
I want to, you're a young company, you're a new company. Are you permitted to talk about clients that you've got right now? I just want to sort of prove veracity here. Are you capable of talking about that?
Well, we can't name the names, but of the banks, we're working with 3 of the world's biggest banks, and also one of the world's biggest consulting firms. And then we have some small businesses who we're working with. We have, this is kind of exciting. We have it's very early for us. It's a little bit of a departure, but a HIPAA detector. So that we've rolled out for a customer. So for medical,
what's the word? Approval to see the documents. Yeah.
Yes. And we have one of our labels also that we created for financial services on covert or off-channel communication, also applies to HIPAA requirements, where there's a big problem. I think 47% of all HIPAA fines come from employees inadvertently sending the wrong patient information to the wrong person. And so we have a detector there, also not just sending it to the wrong person, but sending it through unauthorized channels. So we have that. We have a car dealer, which is getting into auto loans, a housing construction company, which is kind of interesting again. And that's really more for the general classifier of discrimination, wherever there's a huge gender imbalance, as there is in many of these industries. It's very relevant for that. So right now, again, our focus is on matriculating through the big banks who we're working with, but also getting into distribution channels with existing companies that already have the pipes into these companies, if you will. So
are there any other players in this field, or do you have this to yourself right now?
There are players in the field. There are a few competitors who've been at it for a long time. There's Global Relay, there's Proofpoint, there's Smarsh, there's who else is there? Handful, and many, not all, are using outdated AI technology. That again is that brittle kind of pattern proximity matching, or singling out certain designated hotspot, what they think hotspot words, creating those false positives. So there's more. Obviously, they were ahead. They have the market saturation, but we have a better technology. So
that's unquestionable.
Well, for instance,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Julian.
We have over 42 labels. We have accuracy detection rates in the 90th percentile for every single label, which is far above industry standards. And we have a company that we're looking to partner with that has assessed independently, and they've been at this for 15 years, assessed out the quality of our AI and confirmed that independently. Very tough critics. So and much of this is, we have a great team. I think Carolyn brings a lot of expertise and has developed a ton of expertise around how to train an AI. Carolyn, what were you going to say?
Well, I think what really differentiates us is that we point things out in real time before you hit send. And a lot of these companies can detect things, but it's after the fact.
It's after the fact.
They have to go comb through all the stored emails. And then as Julian was just saying, you have to search. They do it by keyword searching. So let's say somebody made a threat to somebody and they're going to look for if you do that again, somebody's going to get hurt. Did they say gonna, Gonna, or going to? Did they say somebody will be hurt? Somebody might be hurt? They have to do all those separate, and were the words smashed together with no space? Was there extra space? It has to be that specific for them to find the actual statement. Whereas ours looks at the generalized meaning of it, and it can find lots of examples and then only pull out the ones. Like what if somebody said, make sure the janitors finish up so the floor isn't wet or somebody's going to get hurt. That's not what you wanted to find. You wanted the threat that somebody made. So ours can distinguish between benign use of the word and intimidating use of the words.
For small players, let's say I'm a brokerage with 4 people in my team. What's the cost?
The cost of not getting it is far greater than the cost. So it'd be you have 4 people, so you're looking at between $10 and $12 per employee per month. Discount upfront payment. So
nothing.
Negligible. Yeah. I mean, just it's basically an insurance policy that you have that's always on. That's your friend and ally, both to you as a company and to you as an employee.
And if somebody, I mean, there are going to be some people on this, and people who'll be watching the YouTube channel are going to want to get access. Just go to Alphy. It's, by the way, I love the name. Go to alphy.com. And how does it work, Caroline?
No, it's HarmCheck.ai.
HarmCheck.ai.
Yeah, our product is HarmCheck. The company is Alphy, so it's HarmCheck by Alphy, but the website is HarmCheck.ai.
And everything's there. You could purchase there.
Yep.
You can transact.
Alf, actually, we also have a cool thing where you can just type anonymously and test it out on the website. So you can anonymously, it's not going to record you. You could type any kind of vile thing you want or happy thing and see what happens.
All right. I'll put some vileness in there later on today. Let's wrap up.
Vent through the website.
Let's wrap up here. We've got 2 minutes left. the problem's getting worse. The environment around us is getting worse. You can't turn on a cable channel without the agita level going up. The discourse is just being destroyed. Give me a sort of a philosophical summary here as to how we should be looking towards the future. Obviously, we want to buy a product like this or buy this product better still. But if I had a team meeting with my group of team members today, what do I say to them about the issue, about the solution, about the risks, all of the above? What's the summation here?
I'll offer something. I spent my entire career, 20 years as a journalist, author of 5 nonfiction books. So I think very deeply about how the world communicates. And I worry that all of the smart compose features and the write my email features will reduce the quality of our individual storytelling capabilities, and we need those. We need those to, elevate ourselves, but the people and the things that are important to us. So I think we need to retain our voices, improve our own communication skills and capabilities in terms of connecting with fellow humans. You mentioned the word discourse. Like, what has happened to how we communicate with one another? When was this allowed to become so polarized and demeaning? That's something that we hope to mitigate. So I would say, find your own voice, work on your own voice, tell the stories that are important to you, use communication in a meaningful way, and use AI as an ally. It's not a replacement.
Carolyn?
Ditto.
Succinctly.
I'll just I do have one interesting factoid that we haven't touched on.
You have many.
We have so many. Recently, there was a story that the British equivalent of the SEC, the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK, did a study, and they found of 1,000 financial institutions that non-financial misconduct rose 72% in the last 3 years. And we're talking about bullying, harassment, discrimination, retaliation, offensive communication between colleagues and clients. So
and they attribute that to what?
They attribute it in part to, well, they don't know if it's on the rise or if people are more comfortable reporting it, but either way, that's a big leap. 72%. They went from 1,303 complaints to 2,347 complaints within a 2-year period. So there is something happening in the world. We can see it with all the news headlines. Why even go on X anymore? Because people are just name calling. They don't have considered opinions, and it's not doing anyone any good because we're not really communicating. We're just
even
going like this.
Even outside of the harsh language, there's a deterioration in the ability of that piece of email to communicate. I'm seeing the communication level go down as well. I get 1,000 emails a day. It's getting worse. It's bizarre.
And it's critical to the future of humanity. Storytelling was at the beginning and it's with us now, and we need to make sure that that it continues in a way that is very human, and not replaced by AI, but aided by AI. And we're learning and we're improving, and we see the importance of that in connecting us with other humans.
Your product actually does make you a better communicator outside of its ability to safeguard and provide a guarantee. It also helps you be a better communicator. Ladies, I want to thank you very, very much. Karen, you're at the top of my screen. Julian, you're in the center bottom. It's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot, and I hope our people have as well. And I know we'll post this to the YouTube this afternoon, and so people can get access to it. With that, look for a Lux stream with the link later on today. And as they say, we are adjourned. Thank you very, very much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Great questions.
Thank you.
Take care.